So I think my first question would be directed at Robert. From a cost and quality perspective, obviously reducing any wastage in your kitchen makes a lot of sense. But when did you actually first think about it from a sustainability perspective?
From me, I suppose I was lucky enough when I was younger. I worked in very fine, high-end restaurants where the products are very expensive. So you would think of different ways of cross-utilizing the products rather than throwing them in the bin. So it's always been in the back of my mind of how we look at things differently. To come here and to see the size of the operation and the volume, it was initially sort of looking at all the different areas that we had. How could we reduce the waste that we were creating, or how could we cross-utilize it? So for more than 12 years, I would say.
So Pei Kang, can you tell us a little bit about the story behind Tria? What motivated you to start it, and what resonates with you about sustainable food packaging?
It's not such a straightforward journey. I think it was a bit of push and pull, midlife crisis, as I'm sure some of us here has felt. At the time, just looking at that single-use packaging, so I just wondering, hey, where does this go after you throw it away? And sad fact, no matter what material is being used today, whether it's considered recyclable, biodegradable, compostable, it ends up in the landfill anyway. So let's be very mindful of that. And I think, being the engineer I am, the problem solver that I am, just started rabbit holing, an analogy, just looking more into the problem and seeing, hey, where's the real crux of the issue? So, and this is where our problem statement is actually a question. Where does the waste go? And we built the business, we reverse engineer the business backwards from there, and eventually lead to this pilot with KFC. So technically, KFC in this case, for those who've been to North Point, KFC, there is a closed-loop restaurant. All the waste that you throw into the bin, including the food scraps, including the single-use packaging, we are recycling it through a process, generic category called organic recycling. Largely speaking, we have two technologies for that. One is aerobic digester, one is an anaerobic digester, so that actually turns back into fertilizer. So back to your question, what got me to get started? I guess a bit of the problem shooter, and I think I feel that we have to take responsibility in a very broad, generic sense, and I would just very automated behavior. Let's say, for example, after a shower, I would just clean up the shower room. It is the cleanest place in the entire house. So take responsibility, right? Finish up after you. I guess that eventually got me moving.
Okay. So Robert, my next question is for you. So I think when I saw an article recently that said that in Singapore, food waste accounts for about 12% of total waste generated, but recycling rate for food waste is actually only 19%. So for hotels, for hotel kitchens in particular, I think this was a stat that came from a couple of years ago and from Eco Business actually. So it was some 25% of all food gets thrown away as waste from hotel kitchens. What's your own experience and perspective on this?
I think in a large kitchen, you have to look at each individual area. The way that we did it here is we sort of do an audit of each kitchen and we see what is actually thrown in the bin in terms of food waste. We work with different partners. We work with Good for Food. We work with Treatsure, who are young guys who come up with different initiatives and different ideas to sort of look at how we can actually reduce what we're doing. Or, for example, here we have an aquaponics farm, which we built just over 3 years ago, with the idea that we had a herb garden, but how do you make it more productive? So we worked with a couple of partners to build the aquaponics farm. From that, we then looked at different ways of cross-utilizing products. Can we feed the fish some of our food waste? Can we look at products that are going to expire that we can potentially use in the farm to create food? Even to the point where we actually spent time on Facebook Googling and talking to other people and realized that, for example, you can take all of your scraps from your pineapple trimmings that we use in the buffet, use the water that we use for washing rice and create an enzyme that we could then use to pour in the farm that then boosts the production of the farm itself. So it's a lot of actually going and explaining to the team and everyone else, look at all the different things that we're doing in the kitchen. What can we actually do? Is there a way that we can use the pineapple trimmings? Is there a way that we can use the old bread? Can we make beer out of it? Who can we partner with in Singapore that we can actually do that? Also looking at the suppliers, looking at the menus that we have, and not just reducing the food waste, because it's also reducing our impact on the whole of climate. If we're flying things all the way from the UK all the way to Singapore, is there something that we can do that is from Malaysia? Is there something that we can do from Australia? And see what different options are there. And just sharing the knowledge with everyone. I like Singapore in the fact that everyone's very open here, so you can talk to lots of different chefs, lots of different restaurateurs, see what is going on. Once you sort of buy in or they have an idea, you sort of share it with other people, and everyone also sort of jumps on it, and together you are much more effective.
Were there any initial challenges that you faced in implementing some of these initiatives?
I think the first few times that you try and do some of them, if you add extra work initially, sometimes people sort of think, why do I have to do this? I think, but if you actually then a week or 2 weeks later, once you actually come back and say, well, do you realize by the fact that we changed this plate or we changed the presentation of the fish from 40 grams to 30 grams, we saved 5, 6, 7 kilos worth of product that was just going in the bin. Look at the impact that it has, not just on ourselves, but on everyone as a whole.
Okay. Pei Kang, I think we had a pre-discussion call a couple of days ago, where you mentioned about identifying and focusing on the right problem in sustainability to tackle, and not everyone being able to do that. What's your advice here on how to approach sustainability from a business perspective? How do you identify the right problem?
Quite a layered question. I think, let's just say, I think first of all, sustainability is not an isolated problem. Not one product is able to solve the entire problem, because it's a system problem. All right, and we want to solve it. For example, I mentioned single-use packaging. It's not about changing out the material to one material and that, is a holy grail and that solves everything. So the fact that still, we need certain durability, we need certain usability in the material. All right, if it's a cup that you can actually eat, as you go, you may not necessarily want to eat the cup. Just putting it in a very practical sense. So systemically, I think we need to zoom out. Okay, and I think if you look at things from a fresh lens, from outsider perspective, how can you follow the path? For example, in this case, what I often say, untangle this ball of strings, right? Follow the path whereby the product is used, eventually go to end of life, identify potential roadblocks that it takes to go through that path, and see what you can do to solve that. So system, I would say, pretty much system view, and along there you might realize that, hey, there's this thing that nobody has been managed to solve, but if I can crack that from a systemic perspective, wow, that could be a great way to solve it. So that becomes, if you manage to crack that, develop new technology, a new know-how, that becomes a great differentiator for you. Okay, and also, I think when it comes to business, I just want to bring up something that may cross between everyday mindset, business, even from a policy level. I think it's a big shame that we haven't gone very far when it comes to end of life recycling. So our recycling rate for plastics today, I think 5%, 1% up from 3 years ago. It's not great. So as much as, I'm sure you guys hear a lot about recyclable, it doesn't get recycled. Okay, so, there has been an ethical debate about segregation. I think we always look up to the likes of Japan, how Japan in home, they does an amazing job in terms of segregation. It's partially cultural, but I think in Singapore context, it's been something we've been pushing for the last 20 years. It hasn't moved. And I think likewise in many urban societies. Okay, I'm not going to start a debate here, but very simply, problem statement is, what's the fastest way to create impact and create change? Okay, fastest way is first to accept that single use is here to stay. All right, accept that as a constraint and look at it from a system perspective and ask what can be done. So I think we approach it in that way. So today, pretty much, for KFC perspective, they do not need waste segregation. Everything that's thrown in the same bin will get collected. Everything is digested. Okay, because segregation is such a teething issue. Just to give you a sense of pureness required. If 1 in 10 consumers does not segregate the waste well, the whole batch gets thrown away. Okay, so understanding the sensitivity of recycling is also something that we took on board. And we are not going to take chances. We're not going to start into the whole educational thing, which probably take 1 or 2 more generations to take into effect. So from that perspective, I think that gave us I would say from a combined lens between business sensitivity, empathy towards what exists today and what is the fastest way to get something in effect. I think that allowed us to create a bit of a differentiator, systemic view, and to close the gap in the fastest possible way. I hope that answers the question.
I think when you mentioned that single-use plastics is here to stay, it's quite shocking, right? It's quite shocking for many people.
So I think let's just start from the basic stuff. There are hygiene for hygiene purpose. Right now it's COVID. Right, even the mask that you're wearing. Okay, can we say that that's probably here to stay? Okay, so I think it's not to debate. I'm not here to start a debate. Okay, but there are certain things related to hygiene, related to certain lifestyle preference that we have chosen. Okay, can we accept? The first step is to accept, all right, and think beyond. Okay, what are the technological advances that exist out there? What are the business innovation that we can build over it? And I think that is a more progressive view. I still find that today we might be caught in a mindset. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, something's not going right. We tend to go back to what it was. Maybe I can layer on another thing which I feel is important for all of us to take note. This digresses a little bit. Path of least resistance. Do you know that the human mind is hardwired, all right, to always take the path of least resistance? Okay, when we do something new, the more and more we do it, the more how do I say, used to it that we are. It actually goes into our long-term memory. We do it intuitively. For those who've been driving for years, you stop for 10 years, you get back into a car, 5 minutes you're back up driving like you always do. Okay, this is the way that the brain naturally tune itself so that it doesn't overload the mind, okay, and it has a tendency always to choose a path of least resistance. And that shapes a lot of the lifestyle that we are seeing today. Okay, are we going to, so if you put it back in a human sense, right, what is the eventual pathway as humanity advance, okay, as we grow forward? Given that there is a path of least resistance, will the masses convert to that? I think very high chance that they will. Okay, I think first thing, embrace this trade-offs as well. Okay, look forward, look for a solution. All right, we're not saying that it's not possible. Look for a technological breakthrough, work on it. Okay, I think that is a progressive view to sustainability, not so much hold our footstep, let's not do anything, let's go back to what it was. So this is a personal view, I know, highly debatable, happy to have a chat about it after.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So measuring and analyzing the data of your sustainability approach is also particularly important, right? For your efforts to actually have real impact so that you can tweak and so on. How do you measure your impact at your workplaces? Maybe we can start with Robert first.
We have different ways of measuring it. One of the ones that we work probably the most in our kitchens is with Good for Food, where we use technology, which is sort of like AI technology, to see what we're throwing away. in different restaurants. We use it slightly differently. Some restaurants we use it for in production to see are we being the most effective in the ways that we're preparing our food. In other restaurants, we use it to see what we're actually throwing away at the end of a lunch period. And I think using that sort of technology, you can have so much data that is shared with you as many times during the day. You can have it every hour, you can have it once a day, once a week, as much as you actually need. And spending the time to actually sit down and analyze that and sort of see what it's actually telling you, because you think that, you know, we need to have these dishes, we need to have these ingredients, we need to have this offering for the guests, and sometimes you're wrong. And to see where you are wrong, and that you know, maybe there's a dish on your in-room dining menu which is not selling, and to sit there and to talk with the team, understand what is actually being sold, understand what the guests are actually looking for, is probably the quickest way to have an impact, because then you're only producing really what people want to buy. Another thing is going out there and seeing what other people are doing. A lot of the initiatives that we've found and have worked with here currently are because we've done discussions like this. We've been involved with different NEA organizations, NEA topics. You meet different people, like, for example, Nicholas from Food Bank. You see what they're doing. That also excites you. You have the opportunity to come back and share, not just with the culinary team, but with the whole team in the hotel, and say, look, we have the opportunity to do this. We can partner with them. We can do some good for the local community. And those are the ways that we sort of see where we're actually having an impact. And it's not just where we're reducing the food, but also the impact that we're having on other people thinking in a like-minded way. From us, we then also put goals to the team, from the senior team all the way down to the junior staff. They all have different goals in terms of reducing food waste, initiatives that we're doing, so that they are then excited about them, and they also help us champion them, because then you've got 400 people doing it, not just 5 people. And that's a way to have an impact. For me, I think that Singapore itself has some very good initiatives. You know, I come from the UK. We don't have adverts in the cinema talking about food waste. We don't have things on buses talking about food waste, but we have the same problem. We just have a bigger space to throw it away. That's the only difference. But it's great to see. I mean, we do a lot with the schools. I mean, since we set up the aquaponics farm, I mean, it was the first time any hotel had ever done anything like this. And yes, we had challenges when we first did it because it was something very different. But then we had so many people who wanted to come and still see it. Even now we have, every week, we have sort of 2 or 3 schools, whether it's from Singapore or from Switzerland or other countries. They come, they want to see what we did. How do we create such a small space? Can you create 100 kilos worth of food that you can serve within the restaurants that are maybe 1 floor up or 1 floor down? And just being willing to take a chance, you know, go and look and see, can we try and make that happen? And yeah, it does take you out of the comfort zone, but as long as you do it and you have other people around you who also are excited, it makes it so much easier.
Thank you. Pei Kang, what about you? How does Tria measure its impact?
I think very much so in terms of what is the impact that we can bring through our business. Yeah, so, but you're asking about workplace. Workplace-wise, I think it is just everyday diligence. You know, you use the plate, you wash it after, you switch on the room lights, switch it off after. Nothing out of the ordinary. Personally, I cycle to work. Some of my colleagues will say, oh, wow, you're trying to save on petrol. Not so much. It's for health. Okay, what I'm trying to say here is, you know, we don't make a fuss on everyday sustainability actions, but rather, you know, the way that I challenge my team in terms of, you know, creating a solution, thinking of a solution, is thinking systemically. Is it going to work for consumers? Today's people's nuances. Is it going to work for businesses? all right? And on a larger ecosystem, do we need government support? That's the first no. If we need the government support to sustain this business idea that you have, it is not sustainable. All right. So I think so we can have 100 ideas. 99% of them get rejected. Okay. So I think it's like just really forcing the team to go into a troubleshooting mode. I think today a lot of good intentions for sustainability can be quite niche. So I layer on to my team scalability. Now, this particular idea that you have, would that work for Nike? Okay, if you think it work for Nike, why would they want to work with us? Okay, we are a small company. Why would Nike work with us? Figure it out. Okay, do we need government support to do that? If we need that, it's not going to work. So I think really taking sustainability on a scalable level, embracing the challenge. I often say we need the best of hackers to tackle this challenge. All right, it may not be the most eco-friendly, embracing person, okay, but we need the best of minds. This is a challenge of our lifetime, and we can hack it. Yeah, and it needs to work commercially, business-wise. Otherwise, it's not scalable.
What is in the pipeline for both of you in terms of sustainability efforts or initiatives in your own fields or in your own sectors?
For us, we're working with a company out of Australia. We've been doing eco-digesting within the kitchens for quite a few years, but it's not the most efficient way of reutilizing the food waste, and also we don't have much call for the pellets because we don't have a garden anymore. So we're looking at a different thing, which is basically we can convert 400 kilos of food waste into 40 kilos of stable waste. It takes the moisture away. This can then be used for the new facility that they're building in Tuas to generate power, or it then gets converted in a different way into fish food. Which for us is ideal because then we can then take that back and then when we use that in our aquaponics farm. So we grow the food, we cook the food, we treat the waste, and then we do the complete cycle. So that for us is the next project that we're doing, which hopefully we will do before October. It will be completed, and it's going to be the first time someone does this project in Singapore. So for us, it's great because it means that we can then share this with others, and they can see different ideas and different initiatives. And then the other big one that we're doing is Accor has an initiative to get rid of single-use plastic across the whole hotel. So everywhere from, not just from F&B, which we've been doing for quite a few years, but in heart of house, so all in cling film, etc., vacuum bags, all of this. All the way through housekeeping, front office, etc. So it was a huge project. It took us probably just to do the audit on what we actually use in all the different areas, probably took us about 3.5 months. And then to find partners and to do the sampling to see that it is a product that you can use in the kitchen. And it does actually do what it says it's going to do. So that's probably the biggest project that we've been doing for the last few years, and that has to be completed before the end of the year. So it's great when you talk to other hoteliers. This is what Accor is doing as an initiative across all of their hotels around the world. A lot of people are very shocked because they sort of think, well, okay, how can you do that? Because not only is there the impact on the team, but obviously there's an impact on your bottom line. But I think it's important that you make these commitments. I mean, it inspires not only yourselves, but it inspires the next generation to come and work with you because obviously they're much more savvy about climate change, all the impact that they actually have on the world than we are, because it's something that they do. I mean, my boys, they do projects at school. They have courses at university here where this is a focus. This is something that they are so much more aware of than we are, and the impact that we have on the whole of the world, and what can you do that is different, and that makes you a company that inspires people to come and work with you, inspires you to go and talk to other companies and say, if we can do it, then surely you can all also look at what you can do and how can you make changes as well, and share the items that you're doing with them, so it then makes it much more feasible, especially in somewhere like Singapore, where if you're doing it as a big hotel, you can share it with a smaller hotel, they can share it with a restaurant, and then everyone has an impact.
Thank you. Pei Kang, what about you? What's in the pipeline for Tria? I know you guys are working on the pilot program with KFC right now, right? That's 6 months, spending 6 months.
Yeah.
What else is up for you guys?
I think the ambition really is to extend that into all the other outlets here in Singapore, okay, and of course beyond the shores of Singapore here as well. So to the extent that a KFC restaurant can be considered closed loop, okay, think about it this way. Imagine that KFC being the first one that actually takes straws away from the table, okay, is the first one to put it back. I know this is just me stimulating the thought here. Okay, straws represent convenience to consumers. Okay, I think in very much the value proposition of fast food restaurants. Okay, so now returning straws in this case, is about customer experience, which is what KFC represents. Okay, and there's actually nothing to worry about because we'll collect everything back. We'll close the loop. We'll turn it into fertilizer. So this is to the effect of that. I'm not trying to say, hey, let's put straws back. But I think this is the forward-looking mindset that we want to embrace. Okay, but technology, business models solve the problem that we face. So that's number one. Second part, I think something that we are very excited about is how we can valorize the waste, right, into high-value nutrients, whereby it can be used to farm crops. Now imagine the fries that you're eating in KFC. Is actually from the waste that it produces. Okay, I think that's the next frontier we want to move towards, regenerative food systems. All right, so this is under works with Yara, a global fertilizer company. And I think, that's something that we'll look forward to.
All right, thank you both speakers. I think I'll pass the time over to the floor now if you guys have questions for the speakers. Anyone at all?
Hi, I think I have a question for Pei Kang. I think it was very interesting that he brought, the discussion up to a more like philosophical, a more philosophical area whereby he talked about the part of this resistance. But I think in a lot of society, when we look at extended producer responsibility, laws and mandatory behavior. I think South Korea, Singapore is also looking at that. I know you talked about the path of least resistance, but in terms of government will and as well as policies, what do you think would be the game changer? I think you need multiple stakeholders working together for us to solve the plastic-induced crisis. Yeah. So maybe if you have some thoughts on that.
Absolutely. In the broad strokes, I think we need different actors of the system to come together. And perhaps I can share a little bit another example. My background is actually in industrial design. Okay, so industrial design, I think, have opened my eyes up to the cognitive economics of how we perceive things. So a book, if you guys are interested, Donald A. Norman, The Design of Everyday Things. So one of the cases that is highlighted is the explosion of the 3 Mile nuclear plant. Okay, so nuclear plant, I can't remember what it's exploded, but basically it went through a bit of a crisis. So, and when they post-mortem, they realize, oh, wow, the control panel looks, the knobs and buttons, the levers, everything look exactly the same. And they pinpoint the fault on the operator. It's not an operator fault, it's a design problem. And the way I look at, in terms of what consumers can do, in terms of how the system infrastructure is laid out today, we have flaws in the infrastructure. All right, this is between the waste infrastructure today, and also in a larger sense, how we handle waste, how we dispose of waste, and how single-use, packaging permeates our everyday life. The way I look at it, do not add government in here, all right, because it's not sustainable. If you need government funds to consistently, all right, police and to mandate that this needs to be done, it's not that scalable, okay? Because one person close one eye, the whole system's going to collapse. Okay, my preferred way. I'm not saying this from that this is a worldview that is going to work like that in an idealistic sense, but I think I would encourage everyone to think more in terms aspirationally. Don't count on the government. True sustainability is self-driven. All right, maybe self-driven through the commercial sense. In this case, how do we? Maybe I can share a little bit more about. I guess without some slides, I might over explain things. Okay, so imagine this as a whole closed loop. Okay, so the fact that with KFC, there are two parts of our agreement. One is that we supply all the consumables, all the materials to them. Okay, this changes purchasing behavior because they used to have several other players, competitors to us, all right, which provides a single use. Okay, so we say, hey, look, you want us to take care of the waste, to digest it properly, to make sure that the traceability and eventually this is high quality fertilizer that goes to the farm. You have to ensure that everything used in-house is great, okay, is compatible. So you have to let us supply everything. Okay, so that waste ownership is contractually binding. With that, we work with waste collectors. Guys, I bring you a contract. Okay, I bring you a $10 million contract to collect KFC waste, all right, but, okay, so this is a tender system. Imagine a tender system, all right, is caters out for several players here, and say, what do you put on the table here? I bring you business, I require you to invest in our digestion technology, you provide the space, you provide the license. So can you see that this as a control point, all right, is necessary to make sure that the whole loop works? So I think we are not thinking hard enough. Can I just use another example, one last example before I overextend? I always do. I came from consumer electronics sector, and one example I find very inspiring is the iTunes. Okay, so consumer electronics sector, in my opinion, is the strongest push industry that we have ever experienced. Okay, as comparative sustainability field is very reactive, passive, reactive. Waste industry, passive, reactive. Okay, consumer electronics, iTunes, what Apple has done here is 3 wins. Not only did they create more sales of their devices, they allowed consumer to buy songs 99 cents per song, not 20 songs at $20, the songs that we do not want. Okay, psychological threshold as well. This is him being very smart with human psychology. Third win, single-handedly push up the total sales of the music industry. Triple win. This is what's lacking in sustainability today. We are not thinking hard enough. We are not creative enough. Okay, we are not trying hard enough. We are waiting for government to do something. So that's why I'm always encouraging, don't factor in policies. It's not helpful. It's not constructive. If it comes in, great. Please thank the ministry for helping us out. So yes, I hope that answers the question.
All right, then thanks again, speakers, and everyone here for listening to us discuss about food waste as well as food packaging waste and how we can tackle. I hope that you've gained some useful insights that you can bring back to your business as well as your daily life.